The anime begins by showing us a girl called Fuku Izumi who, at the end of her manga, is happy with its ending, although he thinks it is a pity that his youth was not, and now that witnessed the end of his favorite manga, it's time to end his life on a bridge with a terrible fall onto the train tracks, but is surprised by the voice of a person behind who tells you that it is dangerous to be there. It is, explains that she only wanted an affair, passionate as the one in that manga, but, thanks to his body, that will never happen, and that is why he must die aiming at that man with a knife, asking him not to bother her even if she sees that he doesn't react for nothing, and it is said that if he touches his body will contract a disease, incurable, and will die. What do you say? In her body does not allow her to live, and so he must die. But there all of a sudden heard a strange sound, and when he turned around he found the report shows that this subject has nailed to himself the knife in his chest, causing him to scream with fright at. Despite this, the guy takes it from the cheeks as if it were nothing, mentioning that he did not never heard of a fatal disease, only for one contact, and that the suicides, they are already out of fashion, showing that his wounds are healed seconds later. When released in the safe area of the bridge, declares that his hand was on her, and wonders what will happen to. Then she warns him that she has already comes and that it's about your unluck. Just after that, the floor where he was finds it slips, and when it falls it is run over by a train. Foko feels bad and apologizes to him, and dragged him back to someone else this, and that's because it took too much in doing so, by referring to suddenly taking one's own life by the head of it, shoots out to the side of her and tells her that now she understands, because the disease was an excuse to protect others. After that, begins to fly through a jet of blood that propels it and there regenerates all along its spine, followed by its organs, thighs, and your body at the end. Ends up naked in front of her, making her. Poor Fuko accuses him of being a zombie by punching him in his crotch to run away, but he pulls himself together and throws himself upon her to embrace her, explaining to him that he is an UND and that he has a few questions for her, remembering what she said of her unlock that she was to arrive, although he hears that some security guards approach and he exits, shot with it to the heavens, finishing on the roof of a building there. Explains that he was able to do this by regenerating their legs quickly and use the to propel, then sees that she tries to escape and ends up holding her by leg. Well, you still have questions and no part will go anywhere. Fuko warns him that is touching his leg so that will activate your unlock again, but it will. Deduces that it should be safe if only, and seeing the reaction of the woman, he touches her clothes. Girl realizes that she is right, in addition to the fact that he cannot let go because is very high up there. Fuko, when looking towards below, he realizes that he is standing on a huge drop. As he stood on the edge, he would makes it a condition that I explain that of her unlock and thus agree to help her, but seeing that he refuses, he begins to, and in the face of the high speed of that terrifying Fuko movement ends by accessing, tells you that it all started 10 years ago. I was just 8 years old, where said goodbye to his parents as they were leaving to a business trip, said that they would go for a week and embrace her long before leaving, giving him a few kisses. Half an hour later, the engine of the aircraft unexpectedly failed and the 270 passengers, including their parents, died, and thus learned that although the range varies, the people who touch it end up getting hurt, thinking that she was the one who caused this to her. Parents have since covered their skin to protect herself at the time she is caught by the UND dead man, who embraces her from behind and puts his hands underneath of his shirt, because he assumes that the older ones is when she is embraced, and that she is. Now she wants to check it out. She asks him to, and also ask her why she is. Suddenly something falls out of the, and a few moments later a box of bananas crushes the und. This will. Fuko takes advantage of this to escape from crazy guy, but he slips on a banana peel and ends up falling out of the building to fall. You can't believe that his life will end because he stumbled upon a banana peel, and that it could never experience anything, in addition to the fact that neither could even do girl stuff. After that, her sleeve separates from it, realizing that it is not yet ready to die. Is then when Lun does his appearance by flying directly into her to retrieve her sleeve and catch her in the air, slowing its fall to safety, and tells him not to take her to the will let it die, not now that it's finally found the power that would give him a death of truth, in addition to the fact that he concealed one of the rules, and if he discovers them, he will enhance the effects of Sunlook, and perhaps Sunlock's biggest coup could to end his life ridiculously extensive. After that, it flies away with and explains explains that they will go to her hideout to discover the secrets of their power. In turn shows us some men who are watching them, and the leader of them makes the report that one seems to be going to his hideout with the new specimen and confirm that they are going to capture after confirming your skill once they are in their hiding place. Undead understands that the time of contact correlates with the effect of Unluck, and now it's time for the surface, so he asks her to take off all her clothes because she wants to grab as much of your body as you can, even though she leaves before it's over even the sentence. And while it is the man he is pursuing declares to him that he will not, is suddenly going to undress his jacket by something, causing her to show your hair, which is very long, and when she is seen by him she begins to cry, mentioning that it is not his fault since no one can cut it, for that would kill any stylist. What is escape Lunda's scissors out of a bag and her hair, asking her not to cut her hair and asking her not to move because if you don't stop touching it, lock will not be activated and will terminate. Until then, in addition to the fact that there is no to worry about it because it is an Undead, and that one was ready years ago to finish a mirror so that he can see himself, and seeing his reflection he can't help but raise a smile at the sight of his cut. After that he covers her with his jacket and separates, while already thanking him, even though he suddenly gets excited, mentioning that I was holding her for 15 minutes, which is why he thinks something is coming large, and in that same instant, its head is decapitated. In the case of the men who were watching them, there the leader thanked her, calling her by her name and also by her Unluck, so thanks to Fuko the Undead is down, and that, by protocol, they must put it in a special capsule, enclosing Led's head so that it does not, after that, it will be able to regenerate. Fuko is placed in handcuffs, making it clear to her, that they are not on her side and that their job is to control the unidentified deniers like themselves, or all the humans that bring chaos to the world. Although Fuko does not understand what, then he mentions to her that her ability is incredible, as she denies the fate of anyone who touch and kills it, being a skill perfect for the murder, but at the touching it through clothing keeps them, and discovering that weakness is easy to counteract it. Fuku asks them that what they want to do with their power, as far as who explains that if they could use it would have no other use other than killing, and that he is sure that Lumet captured it for that reason, because it would be a powerful weapon if it were to be subjected to his will. Fuko tells him he is wrong, and that it may have been known today, but he just used his Unluck on himself and who also did not have gloves on, but he still touched it without a hint of fear. There she apologizes with zombie, well that happened because it cut him off her hair, although she still thanks him to do it right after a lightning strike. About the guy holding the capsule special and falls a hole, they will ask if it was because of Unluck, but leader clarifies that no is the requirements. Activation requirements have not been met, and that perhaps it was a stroke of his bad luck. Fuko knows it is wrong, for that was no coincidence, given that thanks to this Undead was released on enemy. Leader orders his men that all attack at the same time to cut it off, because the weapons are inefficient, and that will be a dead one, but it is still a Novato. And El Comate Undead mentions to him that he may be a novice now, but that he is. Before it was different, usually can't everything, so he put on a cork in your brain to maintain 100 years of memories, and there it is. Removed the piece of his blade from his forehead. This causes your hair to change from style and move in a way that completely different by defeating the four henchmen at the same time with a large combat ability, by mentioning and that if it does not make that seal it would not be himself, and that he now understands everything, for his head to be cut off was not Unluck's work, but that the lightning was Unluck for the haircut. There the razor is placed back in its head, thinking that he should now try, but when approaching the enemy, leader threatens him by placing his katana on Fuko's neck. He understands that he is not a simple UND, but rather that the skills collected for years are also his weapons, and his clarifies that it is something like that, and that he has experienced much longer than all of them. This one will asks him to give up his head and without regenerate, or else it will end up with the life of that poor girl, because seems to be very interested in Onet. With all peace of mind begins to be cut off neck, even though she asks him not to do so, because he can't stand the fact that people around her ends up wounded or dead. Before speaking further, however, the following is given. He already cut off his head completely by telling Fuko that he did not want to be what she thinks by launching her head towards them. Fuko knows the way to generate the biggest hit of a lot by removing the subject that is holding it from a push. What it does is to run towards the severed head of a dead man, giving him a kiss on his cheek, declaring that now, although it is a lock, the undead retains the subject and asks him to run away, so Fuko runs at full speed away from there. Once out of the building, it looks like a light is assumed among the clouds when it comes to of a meteorite that crashes into the abandoned building where were generating an explosion, creating a cloud of smoke. She was concerned about him, but the immortal Undead makes his appearance while looks pretty bad, mentioning that he has never had been hit in the face by a meteorite and tells him that he had a good attendance and back then that was a good unlock, which makes her smile in embarrassment. Then she introduces herself as Fuko and Smo and asks him what his name is, but he answers that he does not remember and that a dead is a good name, although Fuko decides to name him Andy because it sounds like a death, which he accepts later. He is surprised to find out that an occasional kiss was all that and assumed that after all this it is going to do little things for grown-ups and how to. Fuko is expected to run away very quickly away from him and Andy chases after her. She is curious. Fuko talks about that his bad luck always makes the people die and then he felt that he did not deserve to live, but he met an Andy that found it interesting and that I hated him at first, but being with him helped me feel that I could go on living a little bit more, at least that's what he thought. Wondering how things like this because it is currently being pursued by Andy. He understands that if a kiss made that catastrophe from before, then if have sex will cause a stroke of bad luck. Even greater focus is shown angry with him, for it is as if she sees her as a tool for dying and question about what to do to get out of there. He comes up with an idea and explains to Andy that the key is that apart from his mother, his father, and he also kissed his grandfather, who, in turn, kissed his, had a set of dentures that was very scary, but at that moment, all it suffered was in design and died 3 years later. But too much time has passed was her fault, and her point is that the more she likes a person, the bigger the event becomes. Unfortunately, then if I forced it to do something dirty, I would end up hating it forever. Andy understands his explanation and see clearly what the plan is. Now you basically can't leave it die until it happens the next day. Andy takes Fuko to an armory, explaining that has created places like that all over the world to be able to fight with those types when you need the following. It does is to place a large armor on it to Fuko, which is bulletproof of stabbing and resistant to weapons. Chemical countermeasures being a countermeasure against those guys from yesterday. And I already asks who. Andy tells him, which is an organization that monitors mystery unidentified as the two of them, and that for these subjects they are a who must keep under control, and that you can count on a second group of those types will appear today, and that also have special people like the two of them, referring to boys and girls that deny the rules of this world, deniers who yesterday managed to see their skills, but the skills of those who have two subjects are unknown to each other, so have no chance, and everything that is they can do now is to also raise. Tells you that 50 years ago those deniers caught him and got him, did the damage, and spent the next 10 years in a laboratory making the body is pushed to hell and out of return. Then it makes you wonder what they would do to her if they caught her, because they would not. How many people will die just to confirm the rules of their bad luck, and that they could even cut off your fingers to see if they still work when the separates. This is scary. Fuko, who completely refuses to accept something. After that they leave together on a motorcycle because the plan is to keep on running without stopping. Fuko then sees that it is a matter of time for them to be caught and not. Andy wants to make it a burden for him too, says not to worry, and that until he falls in love with him and gives him the biggest blow of bad luck you have, it will be better than. Believes that he will not let her die. She sees that has not yet given up on that by telling him that there is no way for him to fall in love with. He suddenly sees that the sky is fracture, explaining that the people who caught 50 years ago also came out of these things, and that they are called a giant robot suddenly joins smashes his fist against them, causing Fuko to fall to the ground, while Andy is crushed by the great attack. She runs to be able to help him, but out of nowhere he walks towards back and collides with a subject believing who is the enemy, and when he tries to flee, realizes that his legs are not move. The giant robot tells the other to kill the Unluck, then alone will capture LTH as planned, although the other refuses because he wants to talk to her more. Andy will end up regenerate and tries to attack the robot, but out of nowhere it falls to the ground without power move, and Fuko believes that he is the subject that next to him there. Andy realizes realizes that his body will not move, specifically its arms, legs, and torso at that moment is struck by the robot and away from the sight seeing that can now move, and that is the reason for which his body froze, and he was no longer, was because he dozed off from nervousness, and he tore his muscles. Fuko yells at him and that he attacks the one next to him already, who can't move because of him, but he sees that she is moving her hands, and that it's their legs that don't move. Then they are not related because both types are negators of the type of external orientation constraint that appear similar, but their scope and skills are not, and that the type large from their paralyzed his body and assumes that the other has the will to. Fuko, although he does not know what they are denying exactly to achieve it, after that approaches the robot and is hit by this one, realizes that it can move. After they hit at everything, what you have to do now is that you and hit as long as continue fighting. Fuko asks the subject on their side if they will be pursued by people like them forever. He explains that yesterday's meteorite did not help, and that is why their levels of priority of capture increased to 8 on a scale of 10, so now we don't. No matter how many hunters I always avoid, there will be other threatening people, pointing to other deniers besides them. Although upon hearing that Fuko was, why are they not being married, he explains that there are 10 members, the organization of event control, unidentified aka union within there. A special team is made up of 10 deniers. Once inside you are exempt of persecution on the condition that you commit yourself to perform missions without, however, some tests must be passed to enter. Then Fuko understands that if they become members, they will no longer chasing them. The robot leaves them incapacitated to Andy after separating his head of his body, telling fact that all the seats are occupied, using their power to immobilize it, and as long as it does not, vacancies on the list will not be available. Edits or changes so that any denier who is not a member is a Uma that throws the world into chaos. Andy is eventually regenerated by flying to Fuko to make it safe from the two, and see that instead of being married, they have to join the hunters because of that these two subjects will overcome to do something slowly and to be able to be part of the 10 by telling Fuko not to be worry, so as long as he is around, let it die is not an option, and neither is will hand it over to anyone else. After to hear him, she takes off her glove and touches the chest to move away. Quickly there she shouts to him that she believes that a great stroke of bad luck will come, but it is not because she is in love with or anything like that. Meanwhile, the enemy deniers fight to see who pursues the unlock of this. Andy takes advantage of the opportunity to pounce on them. Then, just after a gasoline truck crashes from the bridge into them, creating a big explosion, Andy flies to abandoned buildings, being pursued by them since that attack did not do anything to them to a great extent that the is going to avoid thinking that the deniers deny their own rules or those of others, and to fight against the deniers of external targets you need to discover that when jump button is put in a attack position, denies its movements, then perhaps its power is inevitable, but does not have enough information on the other subject and contain the bad luck without any movement specific. Then he sees that the best thing to do will be to use some of the following hit and run techniques until suddenly it becomes clear that that in front of him he has contemporizing dynamite that explodes. Seconds later, seeing that the entire building is collapsed, the focus is heads to the site of the disaster, wondering if it was his fault or if it was a simple coincidence. That robot comes out of the debris and seeing Andy's arm on the floor, informs his partner Shin Xian, which has captured lead, but there Andy is shown to be surprised by the back, explaining that a part of his losing body disappears in 30 seconds. There he bites his finger and points to the center of the robot's head, producing a bullet-like shot that destroys it from the inside, and that to that attack calls it llama bullet parts, where uses its regenerated power to shoot parts of your average body, and that each time they are torn like projectiles, and that each once A adopts an attacking position, denies his opponent's ability to avoid. Then strictly speaking, it is only stopping the movements while it is in force, and because of that it cannot stop its regeneration. After Shen has defeated him, he realizes that he has defeated Void and that he still wants to beat him because Andy needs 2 seats. In that moment he tries to kick him with the right, but sees that he did it with the left, and as it struggles against Shen, understands that his power has to do with the opposites. He sees that Fuko arrives with the katana and asks him to lance it to him because he knows that Shen cannot cope with an attack that does not, but before doing so, it can be stopped, is paralyzed. Why? Shen mentions that although it was for a fraction of a second, Andy hesitated on whether to cut it or not, and despite having lived almost 200 years, still hesitates when it comes to killing people. Oh, maybe he didn't want Fuku to be there to see him end the life of someone. She tries to touch Shen by the back, but is easily dodged by he, and Shen tells them that he will not reveal to them their rule, but it will tell you something, and that is that will not be able to run away or touch it because its power attacks the inside P of them, so it is useless to resist, although what it does. Andy is to scold Fuko since he got together with him, and thanks to that both of them are in Chen's line of sight. He asks the two who are going to join the Union A, which Andy quickly responds that Fuko will do it, for he knows she would not last even a day in a laboratory, and that it doesn't matter how long it takes him escape to go to see her to earn her heart and give him a night that will forget before following Fuko's request for. Suddenly Shen looked the other way, because it is about to do things right, and while you wash with Andy, and while it removes the clothing, explains that thanks to that body, she has never experienced even a hint of romance, so you don't know if it's in love with Andy or not, but it doesn't matter. What is the reason if there is someone willing to fight for it to such an extent that it extremes, then you can't just abandoning that person without sacrificing nothing, and that it may be able to give him the bad that he needs to die, what 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 he needs to die. What he Shin does is to laugh at this relationship, because they were only supposed to have met yesterday, then says that separating them would be a capital crime, and proposes that they kill other of their members, and that they do so will speak well of both of you within TR days. On August 5th on Lake Baikal, a member will make a move to investigate a UFO, and that they should only kill the member who will be there to be supported, and that they must search someone in a red tie and an emblem, but warns them that there will be people who will be chasing them on the road. After that he leaves the place, and Andy understand that they were saved by the Fuko's unhinged behavior, but tells her that it's not as bad as it is to do it with a girl just because is desperate, and not to do it again. Something like this never again. Later they decide to go to Russia to carry out the mission it gave them. Shen and Andy explains that they are going to take their route to go there. They will first go to driving at full speed to Neg, then they will get on their yacht and reserve it to the Russian port of Vladivostok, then they will switch to a jet aircraft and will go to Irkutsk, where they will hire some of his old wartime friends to provide combat support, and then ambush the target. And after listening to him, the only thing he sees Fuko is that Andy is enjoying all this